This episode of Mark Bell's Power Project podcast is brought to you by Element Electrolytes.
There's that sound again. You guys know what time it is. Yes. So we're in February, and in January, we thought that, Element was just going to send you these 8 packets of electrolytes, and that would be it by the end of January. But you guys loved that so much. You guys loved trying out all of their different awesome flavors that they're like, let's just keep doing it for the people.
Let's keep this party rolling. That's right. We're really stoked that you guys took advantage of that Element Recharge Pack, the free Element Recharge Pack. That Element was like, you know what? We're just going to keep this party rolling. We're going to go ahead and do it again. We don't have an end date in sight. So if you're listening to this today, please make sure you take advantage of it by heading over to drinklmnt.com/powerproject. Again, all you have to do is cover the shipping charge, and then the rest of it is absolutely free. You get 8 samples of the best electrolytes on the planet. You guys know we take them every single day, whether it's just working out, post-workout, intra-workout, it doesn't matter. We love these things. Again, drinklmnt.com/powerproject. All right, we're rolling now. We're doing audio only. Saturday school, traditional style.
No old school.
No Clubhouse, no live stream, just raw dogging it. Saturday school. Mm-hmm. Welcome, class. It's been a hot minute. You guys have had a winter vacation, I guess we'll say, away from Saturday school. Our apologies. Shit's been going nuts over here, and we're doing our best to maintain all these dishes that we have spinning at once. Mm-hmm. And it's finally time to get back to a good old classic Saturday school.
We might not have any more dishes to clean after we get the steak shake out, because you don't need to slice stuff up. You don't need to cut stuff up. No reason to even cook anything anymore. Mm-hmm. You can just have everything in a nutritious and delicious shake called the steak shake. And people got to be on the lookout for that shit.
Absolutely. I'm stoked about it. And I'm just happy that I like both flavors equally. If not, I might like vanilla more, which is untraditional of me. I usually just always go, reach for chocolate, everything.
Well, that's great to hear. I like both.
Yeah, no, they're both amazing. That Swiss Miss, and then I can't really put my finger on what the vanilla tastes like other than just really, really good.
You're probably tasting the spleen.
You're like, that spleen classic.
Yeah, for those people that are interested, stay tuned. We will be releasing that shortly. I don't have a release date yet, but it will be released on markbellslingshot.com. It's the first of its kind. It's called Mark Bell's Steak Shake. It has 4 different types of protein in it. It has collagen protein, beef protein, egg protein, whey protein. And then on top of that, it's what makes it unique and what separates it out from all the other proteins on the market is that it's also fortified with organ meats. And it's got liver, kidneys, heart, and spleen. So bon appetit and enjoy.
Yeah, and whatever questions that you guys might have brewing right now, we will eventually get to it, if not already have, through other forms of content. But all I can say is it's amazing, and I can't wait for you guys to try it. But for today, Saturday school.
Oh, shit. We got actual work to do?
Yeah, we do. Great. We have classes in session, number 2.5 pencils.
You're not going to ask me a question, are you?
I might. Sorry.
Shit.
I know we wanted to hang out. Well, first question, how are you feeling after microdosing mushrooms today?
That felt great. I really enjoyed it. We had I did 3, which I need to figure out how many milligrams or micrograms or whatever the hell that is. Mm-hmm. I probably need to read up on this stuff a little bit more. I do have someone who's helping me with figuring out the dosaging and stuff, but I liked it a lot. I went for a walk after our podcast, doing it while you're working, when you don't have any experience with it, not necessarily recommended, although it was fun to do it. I think it's better if you're working on something that, if you're working on something for yourself, if you're working on something but if you're at work, probably not a great idea. Or if you're in some sort of stressful situation. The only other time I've been high off of mushrooms was on a flight one time, and that tripped me out too, because then I don't feel that comfortable with flying, and so I'm I kind of lost my mind there for a minute. And so that wasn't necessarily a great way of doing it. But I think if you have a moment to spend some time with yourself and go on a walk, I think listening to music would be a great place to start, and maybe even almost trying to get into a meditative mode so you can kind of learn what are these new experiences doing for me. You got to also keep in mind microdosing it versus going on a real journey and taking a lot of them are they're very, very different things. And what's supposed to happen with a microdose is just what happens with everyone's coffee every morning. I think most people would say, if people are being honest, they may enjoy the taste of their coffee because they might get a bunch of stuff in it, right? Mm-hmm. But mainly taking the coffee for the result. And if you microdose, you microdose mushrooms, it's just a way of enhancing your day. The coffee is a way of enhancing your day. I'm not necessarily saying that I think everyone should take this the same way they take coffee, but it's something I'm hearing more and more from other people and some friends, and they're like, "Hey, man, like this just kind of opens up your mind to a lot of really cool stuff." And I view myself as someone who's fairly open-minded. I do want to learn more. I do want to investigate things more. Like I'm already very successful. I execute really well on a lot of things, I think, but I think there's a ton of areas where I can improve, and there's a ton of things that I just don't know. Mm-hmm. And I want to know what I don't know. I want to learn more about it. So
yeah,
that's why I'm poking around.
Yeah. My experience, it was pretty hard to stay focused on, any one thing. So yeah, I think, doing it before an important podcast would probably not be the best move. But afterwards, it was fun hanging out with NSEMA, and we were just joking around about how all we wanted to do was laugh, and it was so hard not to, so hard to hold it all in. So definitely any situation where you have to be presentable, that's your hard pass.
Don't take it in church.
Oh, that'd be great. Anywho, you guys put out an amazing video. Carlos absolutely murdered this edit on the Mark Smelly-Bell YouTube channel. I'm having a hard time remembering exactly what it's even called.
I think it might be called like Do More, Be More.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then, so lately you've been talking a lot about betting on yourself. And so like what the topic today really just comes back to, following your passion, chasing your dreams or whatever. Even though you work at an 8-to-5 job, it's not really easy to do that. So we definitely hear the stories about like, oh, I got fired from my job and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Or I quit everything and I followed my passion and now I get to do what I love to do. But when you look at it from a, I can't think of the word, but basically like in realistic, terms or whatever, it's like, it's really, really scary. Like, okay, for me personally, I have a family. If I wasn't here right now, I'd be working at a job that I didn't necessarily love. So it would be very difficult for me to be like, yep, I'm going to do exactly what, Mark's saying. I'm going to bet on myself and I'm going to quit my job and support myself and my family by following my passion and, living my dreams. But in actuality, it's like, dude, that is scary. Like, am I going to be okay? Like, am I going to leap? Am I going to fall in the net? Am I going to fall on my face? What the hell? But what you mentioned on a podcast was, and it was someone, it was those two guys, one bench. Yeah. There you go. You had mentioned like, hey, like you can set yourself up. You don't have to necessarily quit cold turkey and then go do your job. So I guess the topic for today is like, really, how can somebody bet on themselves and then not like end up homeless, like if something goes wrong or whatever?
Yeah, it's hard to juggle some of these things. When it comes to betting on yourself, let me kind of address that part first. There's a bunch of things that you need to do in order to even get to a place where you're even thinking about betting on yourself. And what I mean by betting on yourself, I mean like you just chasing down the things that you really enjoy, the things that you really love, and figuring out ways for you to make it work through a bunch of different means that you feel are going to get you in a better place. And for most people, a lot of times it's finances, right? It's like a lot of times just, man, let me just have a little bit of financial freedom. Like I don't care about making, $1 million necessarily, but it'd be really cool for the next 2-3 years to make like 80,000 or 100,000. Cause I could see if I made 100,000 for the next like 3 years, even with taxes taken out and stuff like that, and either with just family expenses, I could really see that accumulating and just giving me the financial freedom that I want. So I don't have to worry about my car or my wife's car. I don't have to worry about the rent. Maybe the mortgage is a lot less. Maybe cars are paid off. Maybe there's no debt. So you start to think of all these things. But the only way to become someone that is willing to bet on yourself, you have to be someone that is strong enough to be bet on. Like, you're not going to bet on yourself and it wouldn't be wise to bet on yourself if you haven't really done anything yet. And so this is where you got to get like momentum going. This is where you have to have practices every day that equal up to be something, and so this is where your nutrition can come into play. This is where your training can come into play. We were just mentioning on another podcast, like, we kind of take it for granted, but a lot of us that are in fitness, we've been doing this for a long time and we're trained. Like, we're well trained to know that, look, you got to train at least a couple times a week. There might be times where you only train twice a week. There might be times where you can get to it maybe 3 times in 1 week, and there might be other times where you can get to it a lot more. But it's always part of your life. That consistency, you're always attached to it because this is what you like to do and you love the result of it. So being someone that is going to bet on yourself, you are betting on yourself because of the end result and not because of the immediate payout that you might get from it. But that's what makes it so hard, because you're trying to pay your bills week by week. You're trying to make that next $100 so you can make that next payment on whatever it is that you have. It makes sense. So people are very nervous about it. So my advice is never really to quit your job necessarily. I think that you can simultaneously work on making a living while you're chasing down a fortune, while you're chasing down a dream. And I actually think that is I think there's something really powerful to that. Like, I can think of some of the people I've heard of over the last couple of years that have done these kind of miraculous things, which seemingly are out of nowhere. But Kurt Warner comes to mind. Like, Kurt Warner, I think, was like selling insurance. Wow. And then he like won the Super Bowl. Like, it doesn't make any sense. But I mean, just go and look, I don't remember all the details of his story, but go and look up his story. Go and look these things up. Now, he wasn't just selling insurance. It wasn't like Andrew and I selling insurance and all of a sudden we're like, oh yeah, I think I can throw the ball 60 yards. Obviously he was a well-adapted professional football player, kind of just waiting to happen. Like, he had all the skills. He did all the stuff that he probably needed to do in order to be prepped, in order to be ready for that. Just like knees over toes guy talking about getting an NFL or NBA tryout. Mm-hmm. And you see all the work that he's putting in every day, and you see the things that he's manifesting and the things that he's making work for himself, with the goal of being in the NBA, being kind of this like kind of end game for him. But at the same time, he's able to deliver a message to a really large crowd because he's decided at some point that he needed to bet on himself. And he's made that, he's turned that into a career. He's got 20 other people that are working for him at the moment. And when I get in conversations with a lot of people, I had a friend call me up the other day, a longtime friend. He's on every single episode of this podcast, so you can fill in the blanks there. His brother called me, and we got in some good conversation about how his brother wants to start to do this. His brother has an invention. His brother has an idea, and we got talking about that. And what I realized is, like, people don't really need advice. They just need inspiration. They just need a little push. And I was like, dude, you sound like you already know like what way you want to go. I'm like, so fucking go that way. Mm-hmm. And I actually know that that's the same advice that he would get from his big brother, but it's, you got to hear it from different people. You got to hear it several times. And he was like, oh my God, I'm so fired up. And right when we got off the phone, he texted me and he's like, I already made this change, and this change. I'm already ready to do like these, I'm all ready and set to do all the things that we just talked about on the phone. So I know it's hard for people to want to get themselves in a position to make a leap for something, but it's kind of one of those things, like, you either stand for something or you stand for nothing. And you can have a hurt back your whole life. You can walk around with jacked up knees from not ever squatting anything. You can have a banged up back from not really lifting anything. Or you can have banged up knees and a banged up back from having done what you love to do forever. Look at Ed Cohn. Look at Ronnie Coleman. Some people might say, Ronnie Coleman, he's really impaired. That sucks. And I would say, no, man, like, that's fucking awesome. And Ronnie Coleman's probably actually pretty happy. He's probably pretty bummed that he can't do a lot of the things he used to do, but he rolled the dice on himself. And, that's sometimes you're going to end up in a compromising position when you're a real savage. These are things that can definitely happen to you because you could, Ronnie Coleman pushed a little too far for a little bit too long, probably. But he would have never been Ronnie Coleman in the first place if he never did that. Like, he felt like that's what he needed to do to get himself into that position. And I'm helping many people right now, probably because of my age. I feel like I'm helping a lot of people that are kind of going through this quote unquote like midlife crisis. Mm-hmm. You get to be between the ages of like 38 and 45 or so, or 35 and 45. And shit gets to be kind of confusing on like, what's your life purpose? What are you trying to do? What are you trying to, what are you trying to accomplish? And so for a long time, I've been talking about this idea of do more, be more. The more that you do, the more that you can handle. So a lot of times, Andrew and I and Nsima, and when we run this podcast, we talk to a lot of great lifters. We talk to a lot of great people who've accomplished a lot of great things. Every once in a while, somebody would be like, yeah, you know what? I'm still pretty banged up from that. I still have this. I still have that. But I'll tell you what, I have more friends that haven't done anything physically that are more banged up. Mm-hmm. And so here's the question I want to propose to you. Would you rather work at 6 p.m. for the corporation that you're with now and spending the extra time away from your family doing that? Or would you rather put in a lot of time and effort in putting 60-hour weeks in or 70-hour weeks in because you're working 40 hours a week and you got 20 or 30 hours of side hustle going on? You barely see anybody. You're just totally fucked all the time. You're pretty tired. Anytime you have a chance to be with your family, you fall asleep. Like, a lot of these things happen when you're chasing down two things at one time. But the other thing that would happen is now you're working at 6 p.m. or 7 p.m., but it's not for somebody else. It's for yourself. Or it doesn't always have to be for yourself necessarily, because maybe you feel what you're doing has a purpose and feels good enough for you and to you for you to stick with it because it's all part of a lot of other things that you believe in. And those are totally fine. And, making a living is totally fine. And having a job that you don't really love is actually totally fine too. Like, I have a lot of respect for people that do that. I have a lot of respect for my dad who went to work at IBM every day to provide for his kids that were completely ungrateful for everything that he did every single day. But seeing my dad make changes over the years and seeing him, like, my dad had to actually lose his job from IBM. And then me seeing all the stuff that my dad did, I'm always like, holy shit, like he bet on himself. Like he made it all work. He worked for the biggest company, one of the biggest companies in the United States, one of the biggest companies in the history of the United States. IBM is massive. He worked there. He was very successful. He made a lot of money. Even back in the 80s, he was making like six figures. I mean, he crushed it. He was doing awesome. They chopped him off at the knees right when he was at like 19 years. So he couldn't collect a pension and couldn't get retirement and things like that. And they replaced him with a bunch of young kids because it's cheaper and it's easier. And that's the way these companies are. But my dad is smart. He's resourceful. He already had a tax practice going. He already had some ideas and doing stuff in real estate. And so, yeah, I'm sure he cried about it. I'm sure he was upset. Well, I don't even know. I never asked him if he cried about it, but he probably did. Probably was pretty upset by it. He's probably pretty hurt by it because you think there's this emotional, connection, but really they were just paying him for a service. And that's a huge company. And that's just kind of the way it has to be at those places. And so anyway, he moved on, but when he moved on, he was able to pick up his old income within a couple of years. It took a while, but he was able to do it. And I think that just about everybody possesses that ability. And even if they can't recoup all of the money that they may make doing some of these other things, man, at least you don't have someone breathing down your neck. At least you don't have some of the old pressures that you had. You might have, because we're really talking about trading time and money too. So there's another factor in there to think about. When you're working, if you're working like 50 or 60 hours a week for somebody and you really feel like you're working your ass off, there's a huge difference between doing that for $70K versus doing your own thing for $40K. And I know, you might, oh man, the money, shit, man, and I hear people talk about money in all kinds of ways that I don't think makes any sense, because they're like, oh, this company, they offer me, they pay for health insurance, and I have a company car, and and it's like, those things, they're fine. I mean, but you don't need any of that, because you would be fucking better off doing your own shit, making maybe 70% of the amount of money you make now, maybe not half, because that's pretty drastic, making about 70% of the money you have now, paying for your own insurance, paying for your own shit, your own way, doing your own thing your own way. Because once somebody pays you for anything, you are now responsible to reach that value marker. That's the way it usually works. Like, luckily here at Slingshot, we don't, it's not really like that. I mean, it's always like that to some degree. But I'm not like scouring over Andrew and being like, oh, I don't think he did that. Oh, he did a little extra here, so he can give me extra $20. Oh, he did less this week. Deduction of $20. You know what I mean? Like, we don't operate that way. But in the grand scheme of things, that's the way everything ends up working. So it's not always just about working for yourself. It's about finding work that you really feel great about and that you really enjoy. If you enjoy what you're doing, how can you continue to bet on yourself? You can tell people at your company, you can say, hey, you know what? Andrew can come to us and say, hey, you know what? I've been running this podcast for the last 4 years. I got a couple of other ideas for us. I mean, Andrew does that all the time as it is. Do you think that that's going to provide more value for us? Do you think that Andy and I won't look at each other and be like, Andy, when's the last time you thought about the podcast? And she'll be like, huh? And I'll say, when's the last time you thought about the podcast? And she'd say, think about it for what? And she would say, well, when's the last time you thought about it? I'd be like, I don't know. I just show up every day and I do it. The point is that we don't have to think about it, because we got someone that thinks about it all the time. We got someone that's executing on it all the time. That provides more value. What can you do in your own job to provide more value for the company that you're working for if you're into what they're doing? If you're not into what they're doing, then don't worry about it, because you are going to be better off following your interest. And, I know some friends they go through training for being a police officer or an EMT or a nurse. And they tell me like, oh, this training that we're going through is such bullshit. I hate it, And I'm like, well, don't force yourself to really try to be a material expert on something that you don't like, because within being a police officer, there's different types of jobs that you can have. Within being a nurse, there's different types of, within being a doctor, there's different types of jobs. So you want to gravitate towards what you're interested in. Once you start to do that, and once you start to build upon your interest, you will become something that would be referred to as a material expert. Andrew knows a lot more about podcasting, podcast engineering than I do. He's a material expert in that spot. I spent a lot of time as a kid and even now studying nutrition, studying lifting weights. So in a sense, while I'm not a doctor, I am a material expert in a given field. I can provide more value than the average person to be able to put out content, make videos, do these kinds of things. So I can provide more value either for a company, or I can be like the knees over toes guy. Who would have thought that would be a thing? He went out and did his own thing, just programming. He does programming for people with bad knees, basically. I mean, he's showing people how to jump higher and improve performance in a lot of ways, right? But who would have thought? That's mind-boggling. I wanted to say it again because it's worth mentioning again. He has 20 employees. I mean, that's crazy. Financially, it sounds like he's doing really well. But it's not so much about the finances. It's about he struck gold in a sense that he found what he loves doing, and he's able to assist other people in doing it. Now he's on his way. He's going to be able to reach millions of people. I mean, being on our podcast was a huge leap. And then he's going to be on Joe Rogan. I mean, before the end of this year, he'll be on Joe Rogan. I have no question about that. And where is that going to lead him to? But that's, again, here's another person that they rolled the dice on their own life and they bet on themselves.
Yeah. And so going back to, making $70K versus 40. And I know like your views on like owning versus renting are maybe different than others. And I know we had Grant Cardone in here that's like, oh, rent where you live and, you know, own where you rent out or whatever. So just in the general sense, owning versus renting, it seems like if you are, you know, killing yourself at a job that you don't necessarily like and you're working for somebody else, it's sort of like you're renting, you know, that paycheck. Whereas, you know, you might, you know, again, back to the housing thing, you might be able to rent a really big, nice house and you can only afford to buy a little shack, but that little shack is yours. So, Shaq O'Neal. So if you are working on yourself, it's sort of like that money and time that you're putting into it, it's to own that shit. You know, you're owning that later.
Yeah. And the place that you own, you know, I'd imagine that you're going to care about it more.
Right.
I mean, think about even taking back a step further rather than something that you even rent, but something that you're in very temporarily, like a hotel room. Maybe you don't care if you like pee on the lid or pee on the floor. It's your last day there. You know, you're checking out. You don't really care because it's not yours. You know, we shouldn't treat stuff like that because we should recognize that, like, you know, hey, you know, keep it nice for the next people that come in line. But not everyone's really taught that way. And not everybody has this idea of you want to try to leave things better than the way you found them is really a nice way to kind of live your life. But it's also, it doesn't always work out that way. But when you do own something, you do have ownership of something. Yeah, you're going to take pride in it, you know, and think about, you know, when you have somebody come over the house and stuff and you clean up a little bit and stuff because you want best representation of the house and you're proud of it and you want to show it to people. And I've done that in every house I've ever been in. Doesn't matter how big the house is. Doesn't matter whether it was the more current homes that people may have seen on YouTube and stuff, or if it was where Andy and I first lived, even in apartments and stuff like that. We'd have people over our apartments. I've never been ashamed of it. I've always been kind of proud of it. I've always been like, oh, this is cool. We got friends coming over. Like, this is going to be a lot of fun. I never really once thought about like, oh, like this place is actually really tiny, you know, because I didn't grow up that way. I didn't grow up like, you're proud of what you got, you know, you got what you got and you're proud of what you got. And then also it's if you feel like other people have shit that you don't have and you do feel a little bit inadequate about it, just recognize it's just a time period. You know, you're fucking 20 years old, you know, or even if you're 40, you can say, well, you know, I was drunk and high for 10 years or something like that. You know, I fucked around for a long time and I got divorced. I ended up, it's fine. It's fine. You're still alive. You're still in the game. You know, you're still part of everything. You could still have an opportunity to end up betting on yourself. And so I just believe the only way that's going to really happen though, is that you have to be doing stuff. We have a lot of great people that come on the show and we have some guests coming on soon that are really, really awesome, like researchers, and they're great people in the nutrition space and stuff. And I have a lot of respect for them, but I don't have as much respect for them as I do as for like someone like Stan Efferding. You know what I mean? Or I'm not going to really listen to them as much when it comes to certain things where I might be more apt to listen to Ed Cohn. You know, like there's people that talk about it. There's people that read about it. And those people are all great. They have great information. And we might as well have a white belt mentality and absorb some of the stuff that they say. But also kind of, you know, keep them at bay a little bit because you're like, you know what? You haven't really done it. You haven't really, you haven't put your own ass on the line. You haven't really bet on yourself, truthfully, because if you did, you would be practicing these things that you're talking about all the time. And you would be a savage or look like one if you were doing these things all the time.
Yeah, doing that's so important. You know, before I did anything awesome like photography or just creating anything, you know, I would look at my schedule and be like, I don't have time. I don't have the energy. Like, you know, and that would be working like 40 hours a week where you clock out and you're done. You don't, work doesn't follow you home. You know, that's it. But like I'd get home and I'd be gassed. But then once I started picking up photography and like learning it and like I had an insane amount of energy after that. I was so fired up every single day.
Oh, that's great.
So I think if somebody is listening and they kind of feel that way, like, man, you gotta do it. There's no other, you've said this before. I can't give you any more motivation. You just have to do it. And I think once people experience it, you kind of like, we talk about cheat codes all the time. Mm-hmm. It kind of opens up this door that you didn't even know existed, where you're like, oh shit, like that's why, Mark's doing, multiple podcasts per day. He's also filming content and stuff. It's like, yeah, because you love it, right? Like every single time you hit record, it's like you wake up again.
Yeah.
You get fired up all over again.
We've been recording more stuff here in the last couple weeks than I've ever experienced before. Mm-hmm. And I do love it. I feel great about it. Mm-hmm. I feel like I could still do more. You know?
Yeah. And I know people think that it's crazy, but like, I mean, dude, I don't know, whatever it is you're into, you like football, you start a football podcast, like, oh, you're already talking about it, like, are you fired up to go to work? Like, maybe not, but are you fired up to hang out with your buddies and talk about football? Like, okay, well, imagine that's your job. Like,
I think we just have kind of, some rough interpretations of some of the things that we experience, some of the things that we do on a daily basis. And while I do understand the idea of getting a paycheck, I almost don't understand it, because I don't know why you would ever get a paycheck that you're not really proud of. So like, either be super proud of the amount of zeros that are on it, mm-hmm. or be proud of what it represents. Like either way, be proud of one or the other, and or both. Like you might be able to figure out both, which is really sick. But just think about all the different people we run into, and all the different people we talk to. You and I get so pumped when we hear somebody, like if somebody told us they made $10 million, if just in passing, we started talking to somebody and they're like, I started this keto business and online sales are great. And, last year we made $10 million. We'd be like, fuck, dude, that's okay. That's really cool. But how many times have we gotten in conversations with people in the gym or people that are passing through Super Training Gym, and they're like, yeah, man, I started powerlifting. I started to get way into it. And they're like, I had this pain in the ass job that I really hated, and just life was miserable. I started to change the way I eat, the way I ate. I started changing who I hung out with. Now I'm lifting more often. I lost 40 pounds. I quit my job working for FedEx. I fucking hated it. And now I'm sharing with people, fitness, and I'm sharing with people whatever it is that they got into. And they're like, I also picked up this, job working at Target or something, stocking shelves. We would get more pumped for that person than we would for the person that just told us they made $10 million.
Yeah.
And the reason is only because the person that's in this experience was smart enough to pull themselves out of some adversity, and they're now well on their way to being able to do things that they're really super proud of. Where as this other person that started this, keto company or whatever, and is doing well, I'm sure that they're pumped about all those things, but it's way different when it's I don't know, it just feels way different when it's something that you had to talk yourself out of old bad habits of thinking that you were stuck in this pit of like, you have to work for this company, this has to be this way. Whereas this guy, in this scenario, kind of dragged himself out of it through lifting, through recognizing some other things, whereas with the first story, the guy didn't really share much with us about where he came from, where you came from, where you're going, where you're heading. Those are the most important things. When we talk to people, the things that I get the most excited about is like finding out where did someone come from, and then where are they heading? Not just like how much money they make. Like you want to kind of know more,
Yeah. And then in that first scenario, you don't necessarily hear this, but in the second one, you do a lot, which is, did all this that you just said. And then also, my wife and I have never been happier. I've never been closer to my kids. Like I now work out with my kids or whatever it may be. And then that's where it's like, oh, okay, you're finding happiness. The guy that made 10 million, oh, give me 10 million, I'll be happy. Like, no, we get it. But at the same time, like maybe now that scenario, he's not spending as much time with his family, but you know, that's another conversation. But you know, that's what I get fired up for too, you know, is like, oh, you're finding happiness over, you know, that, you know, maybe they were at FedEx for 20 years or whatever, you know, and they had to bounce from there.
Chasing down a dream, you know, you're chasing down something that you know in the end that you're gonna really love. What's helped me a lot is just, you know, I don't think I really have ever had much of a negative mindset, although I can speak negatively for hours on end sometimes. I can get just as negative as the next person occasionally, and I can find myself in a little bit of a funk sometimes. And that's something that I need to continue to work on. I need to continue to get better at it. But something to know is that there's no governing body, there's no laws of nature that say that you have to have any particular thoughts about a certain subject. You know, you don't have to, like, I've mentioned this before, you know, but if I was to put up a bunch of different pictures of, let's say, food, you would have different facial reactions. You can run a study and see different facial recognitions. Maybe we hear different noises from you and so on. We show you an ice cream sundae and you're like, you know, we show you a fruit smoothie, you know, like you're like, oh, that looks pretty good, you know, and you're just happy, you're excited. A cheeseburger in the next picture. And then the next picture is like a thing of liverwurst that's uncooked. Now you're like, right? But this is our interpretation of all the stuff that we're hearing throughout the day. We're doing that shit to things without giving them a chance, without giving them a shot. Maybe in the case of liver, maybe you've tried it before, and maybe that's how you know that you don't enjoy it. But with a lot of what life is throwing at us, and a lot of the different things that we have to deal with on a daily basis, it's important to understand that we have complete control over how we think. You might not always have control over the actual thoughts that enter your brain, because there's thousands upon thousands of thoughts that hit us every single day. But you have control over how you think about those thoughts, and you certainly have tons of control on how you react to those thoughts. And so I think a lot of times when people are thinking about wanting to be in a better spot, or even thinking about this video that we shot where we talked about, you know, bet on yourself, you know, people are probably like, you know, how am I going to, who am I? You know, I'm not Mark, and I don't have a podcast, and I don't own my own gym, and I don't, you know, I don't have an invention. I don't have a great idea. And this is where I would disagree with people, because I think that everyone has ideas. I've never met one person that I've communicated with on a consistent basis where they haven't told me at least one time about some idea that they had, whether it be in some sort of collaboration with business that we're doing with them, or someone part of the team, or just a friend. I mean, I have never run into one person that doesn't have ideas. I think we all have ideas. Ideas, I think, are an interesting thing. Joe Rogan talks about his concept where he thinks ideas are out there floating in the universe and they come attached to us. And that is shit, that might be the case. But my point there is you have to have the right mindset in order to be able to even accept those things. You know, did I think of the slingshot completely on my own, or did it like land on me? It may have landed on me, but I may have been receiving of it as well. If I had a bad interpretation of what I thought it would take to be what if I thought about the slingshot from the beginning, and what if I thought it all the way through? I would have never made it. I would have never made the product. There's no fucking way I would have made the product. Because being an inventor is one thing. Coming up with a product, being like, hey, I think I have a pretty cool idea. I'm going to make this stretchy thing that goes across your chest, and it's going to assist people in bench press, and, you know, it happened to work out on push-ups and dips and stuff like that too. And it's going to help people's shoulder. That I can make sense of that whole story. And I can say, okay, well, it makes sense that it came from me because I've been lifting for a long time. I hurt myself a bunch of times. So I can get all that. But if someone tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey man, wake up from this fucking dream that you have right now, because Mark, remember, like, dude, you're just some fucking lifter from Poughkeepsie. You're from some kid from Poughkeepsie, and you're really not that smart. And actually, as far as I know, you never graduated from college. You barely graduated from high school. You don't have a business degree. So now you're accepting a job. You shouldn't do this, because you're going to, if you make the product, that would be great. But what do you know about shipping? What do you know about receiving? What do you know about, did you go to business school? Do you even know that you're going to end up in the service industry? That's what you're going to be doing. Like, you claim you want to work for yourself, but now you're selling product to customers. Once there's a financial exchange, now you work for them, which is another story probably for another day, but there is no really working for yourself. But you kind of see like how quickly you can horrify yourself. And I could say to somebody, a friend or whoever would say that to me, even if they said it to me in a nice way, hey man, like that's great that you have an idea, but it's going to be expensive to start it up. Like, they're not even really trying to be mean, trying to be logical. They're just trying to, and there is a logical side to our brain and there's an illogical side to our brain, and they tend to fight back and forth. For me, I don't really have a rational or logical side sometimes in some cases. Like, I always think I've been lucky to be confident in myself to the point where I'm like, this is a fucking great idea. I'm going to tell everybody. I'm going to show everybody. I'm going to put it out there into the universe. I don't really think about a lot of those other things. But I would have been stopped very quickly if I did think about those other things, because there was times in my life where I did think about those other things, and it did prevent me from doing a lot of things. And it actually stopped me from making the slingshot for a long time. The slingshot idea was in my head for like 4 years before I ever even acted on it. What if somebody else would have got first to market with it? I wouldn't be able to share the story with you. I wouldn't be doing any of the stuff I'm doing now. So I'm grateful that it ended up working out that way. But if I would have thought about it from the beginning that I would be in like a customer service industry, which I am, because people buy the product and then people need to know about Andrew's seen it all, like with his company. It's just absolutely stupid, all the different things that go on with creating a product. I'll just take this example of this Mind Bullet that's sitting right here in front of me. I know it's just an audio transaction, but I have a 100 capsule Mind Bullet bottle right in my hands, an opaque glass bottle. Like, even getting this opaque glass bottle was a thing. Even getting, the top of it, or getting the cap to be black, and the colors and the printing, and there's a service around all this. Somebody made this opaque glass thingy that it's in, this jar. Somebody makes the top, somebody makes the label. There's professionals that actually make a label that is scaled to go on these specific glass bottles. And then you have to figure out, well, how many do I order? You're like, well, I don't know, because I never sold these before. Well, how many people are going to buy them? Well, how am I supposed to know? You don't know anything. You know nothing. All right, well, I'll order a couple hundred of them. All right, well, let's put them online and let's see what happens. Oh, fuck, we just sold out of them all. Or, oh, shit, like, are you sure that we launched it? Because I didn't see any sales. What's going on? And then now it's like, okay, let's learn about the internet a little bit. What do you know about emails? I know nothing about emails. Well, we can collect emails and we can email our customers. Oh, cool. Well, let's do that. Mm-hmm. How do we figure that out? Oh, well, that costs this amount of money. And if you really want to do it really well, you got to hire somebody to be responsible for your emails. The whole thing is just, you're really, really, really entirely fucked if you start to think about any of these things too much. But that's why it's important to really trust that gut feeling that you have. You know that you want to do this thing. You know that you want to do this diet. You know that you want to start this podcast. You know that you want to write this journal. You want to write this book, whatever it is that you want to do. You know that you want to do it. Now the question is, how badly do you want to do it? Once you start getting all these questions thrown at you, Mark, what do you do with Facebook advertising? What do you do with Instagram advertising? How many ads do you have up on Pinterest? How many ads do you have on TikTok? Do you guys have a Clubhouse? Do you guys... Okay, you have a podcast and you have a YouTube channel. and you have a YouTube channel for the gym, but do you have your own YouTube channel? Because that might be, it's like, you just get into like a whole giant bundle of just, there's a lot of shit going on, you know, and I still don't know a lot of it. But I think there's something to be said about being naive and being a little bit of a gambler, but you're not gambling on nothing. That's the important thing. Because I do hear people say stuff, and I'm like, that motherfucker will never do that. And I know I'll know he'll never do that. Because he just talks about it, and he doesn't do it. He doesn't represent it. Like, that guy's never going to do that. But, like, take Sully, for example. If Sully told us he's going to squat 1,000 pounds, I'd be like, yeah, fuck yeah, you're going to squat 1,000 pounds. I mean, the only thing I can see stopping that guy would be if, you know, I don't want to see him get injured, but if he was to get hurt, that's the only thing I can think of. I mean, he's young, he's strong as fucking ox. Mm-hmm. He keeps getting stronger. Everything I see from him aligns with he's lined up to do that at some point, right? Mm-hmm. But we do sometimes hear some people they'll say certain things where you're like, no. That guy's talking about being ripped, but I saw him eating a sundae the other day, and even a couple days before that, he was eating fries. Like, that guy's not about it. He's not going to do what he's saying. So when you do bet on yourself, make sure that you're a person that is showing signs of developing these habits strongly in a direction that is going to turn you into something. Because you don't want to be. You might have to wait. You know, is my point. Like, I had to wait. I had to wait a long time. I had to lift for many, many years. I had to squat 1,080 before I started to really. I mean, I had to probably squat like 1,000, I guess. And I made the slingshot probably shortly after that. But the point is you're going to have to do something, and it doesn't have to be as big as 1,000-pound squat, but you're going to have to do something to prove yourself to yourself, so you're strong enough and confident enough that when someone says, "Hey, you're up," you're like, "Fuck yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to go. Put me in, coach." Mm-hmm. Or here I am with my dice. I'm ready to roll the dice on myself. I'm ready to bet everything I got on nobody else but my fucking self.
Fucking mic drop. So we can give people some confidence. What did you fear going into like the launch of the slingshot? You know, maybe somebody thinks that you had it all together and you knew it was going to happen. I mean, I think you did kind of know it was going to happen because that's just the way the person you are. Mm-hmm. But like, what did you actually like have like an, oh shit, like I got to take care of this now? Like, what was that moment? And then how did you get over it?
You know, it was really interesting in seeing where these different things come from. But Tom File, who we had on the podcast the other day, he talked about what it took to be a cold-hearted criminal. And I've actually heard this from other criminals before, too. Heard this from people that have killed people before when they've been interviewed on like TV and documentaries and stuff. I remember they asked the guy one time, they're like, "Man, how did you shoot somebody, you know, for $600? And he just said, "I'm a cold-blooded killer." You know, that's what that person is. Mm-hmm. So they don't have the ability to empathize with the person that they shot. You know, but how this relates to what we're talking about here is Tom said, because we asked him, Tom ended up spending almost 9 years of his life in prison, which that's wild. You know, that's fucking really, really, anyone that's been to college, I mean, imagine doing that twice, you know? But you're you know, it's obviously it's way worse. You're confined to a lot of restrictions and a lot of stuff that you obviously don't want to do, and a lot of foods you don't want to eat, and a lot of your freedoms are taken away every single day. We asked him how he got stuck in that position, and anyone that's been in jail for that amount of time or in prison for that amount of time has gotten in trouble before, most likely. You know, it's usually not out of nowhere. There's usually like things leading up to it. You get in trouble a couple times, get some slaps on the wrist, and you don't learn from those things. What he said is that he started to know a larger and larger group of people that were capable of certain things. And it didn't matter what the task was, they would find a way to figure it out. So I know it sounds crazy, but to take that criminal mind and to take what he said about there is no situation that's too great or too big, we're just going to break this down. Oh, Joey over here, he knows where to get guns. You know what I mean? Bill over here, he knows how to fucking break locks all day. This guy over here, it's all problem situations. It's all problem solving. And so when it came to diving into business, I've always been, because of my background with lifting, it was like, I want to figure out, how do I squat 1,000 pounds? What's the limiting factor in squatting 1,000 pounds? Well, it seems like everything is, because it's a lot of weight, right? Well, for me, it was usually my lower back. And you guys seen the videos of me doing those good mornings with 400 pounds, 500 pounds, 600 pounds, sometimes 5 or 6 plates with a bunch of chains on the side, doing those heavy good mornings. Those heavy good mornings prepared me, because I knew that when I squatted, because I have kind of a long torso, or maybe just not the strongest back that I needed, that in order for me to squat 1,000+ pounds, I was going to have to use my back. I was going to end up in a shitty position where my back was probably going to have to take over, or if my back was just strong enough, I never even had to worry about the shitty position in the first place. And so anything that could potentially come up when it came from a business perspective that would kind of haunt me, or would kind of, get me concerned or whatever, or worried for a minute, I would just be like, no, this is just a problem situation. Like, me worrying about it, me being scared about it isn't going to change anything. Somebody listening to this right now who's worried about their diet, who's got real concern over the diet they're going to try this Monday, that's not going to be helpful towards losing weight. While it's not helpful, it's still understandable that it happens to us all the time. But there really wasn't anything that I was fearful of, because I felt like I had a really strong idea. I felt like the idea would sell to the people that I had lined up. The other thing is, I already felt like I was at least something and someone of some sort of significance before I went out and I sold it. So you either have to trust in your own person, or you have to trust in your own product. If you're somebody that created a product, does your product align with all the things that you're trying to share with people about selling it? It doesn't even have to necessarily align with everything that it doesn't always work out that way, but it does need to align with the communication of what you're trying to share with people. So when it came to getting the Slingshot launched, and getting it going, there wasn't really anything. I was like, we're just going to get them shipped to our house. Andy said she would take care of the shipping and stuff. I trust her to do that. We have a website. People can go on there and click, and they can buy it. And when they buy it, we'll get dinged for it. And then we'll create a label and we'll ship it out from our house. And we did that for as long as we could handle, until that became too big of an issue. But this is how irrational people are. And this is how fucking crazy people are. People really tend to count their chickens before they're hatched. And people are like, oh man, if I did that and I started selling that at my house, what would I do if it got too big? That's like, dude, well, slow the fuck down for a second, man. You haven't even proved that you can do anything just yet. So sometimes people are even fearful of just even success. But success is a great thing. Being successful or having these things that you might view as being bad. I've talked before on the show about having knee sleeves blow out and things like that. And that ended up being a good thing. So I was able to communicate with the customer and go above and beyond what you would normally expect. And then that customer became like a lifer. Like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I got so pissed off. But they literally ripped right when I went to put them on. And we said, hey, we understand. We're sorry. What's the best way for us to make this up to you? With what we're going through right now with the Steak Shake, like, we haven't even sold any of them yet. And we are already, hearing a lot of vibes and hearing a lot of things. And just by our estimation, we're going to sell thousands of these fucking things. So we had to, we have 3 orders lined up already, because we know what's going to happen. And we're trying to, fix that lead time. But even if we were to be sold out, people would view that as being bad. Like, let's say somebody has an idea right now that they can only make by hand. And like the Keto Brick guy, you have an idea that you can only make by hand. Maybe it's something that you sew or something that you stitch. Maybe you have an idea for a gun holster or something that's made of particular leathers or whatever it is. Hey, you know what? Put them online. Tell people that there's only 10 of them. That's all they'll ever see on your website for a long time. There'll only be 10 of them on there. And every time they go to the site, they just know that they might be fucked. They might not be able to get the product. But what does that do? Like, what did that do for my friend Jason Harrison, who owns the former owner of KUIU? He unfortunately died a couple years ago. What did it do for that brand, for KUIU? That shit was always sold out all the time. And people were pissed. People were like, fuck that company, man. I ain't never going back to their shit because they're always sold out, man. I bought that one jacket that one year. And then I went to buy their gloves and they were sold out. And I went to buy their boots and they're sold out of this, sold out of that. But they already have that one item, or their buddy's got a couple of the items. And they're like, oh man, I need to go. I need to just get on a waiting list, for their product. And just don't look at anything as look at everything as just simply being a hurdle. Are hurdles hard to jump over? Yeah, they're fucking hard to jump over. But even a hurdle that an Olympian would jump over, you might be kind of looking at that going, shit, I'm not sure how I'm going to jump over that. But if there was $40,000 on the other side of that hurdle, you would figure it out. So treat every situation in life like that. Treat every situation in life as if there's knowledge out there to be gained, to understanding how to get over that hurdle, how to get past it, how to get around it. And you just have to find it. Like, it's every single thing that happens in the universe is explainable. There is knowledge out there to find it and to solve it. Even when it comes to death and even when it comes to aging, there's no law, there's no findings of anything anywhere that says that we have to age. It does appear that all things die off eventually, all things change, even like rocks and trees. But can somebody figure out how humans can live to be 300 years old? I believe I believe that with enough knowledge, possibly. I believe there's something is holding us back from getting past 80, 90, 100. People don't really live past 120. Have we ever had anybody live to 150? Something will happen at some point. They actually think by the year 2050 that this idea of singularity will happen and that you will be able to live on forever. Your subconscious or some weird shit like that. I don't know. People listening can probably speculate better than me because I don't really know much about it. But everything is just a problem situation. And how do you solve problems? You solve problems by identifying what the issue is. What is this problem? What is your current problem in your life? Maybe it's just that because I don't really think you can really get anywhere unless you're a material expert in something. So if you want to, practice this right now, I would like for you to try to think of anybody that you know that is really successful in anything that's not at least a material expert in their particular field. What you'll find is every single time, 100% of the time, is you will find that when people are material experts in a specific field and they've also taken that same field and they monetized it, that they're normally, I guess that they're always very happy with what they're doing, whether it be a painter or whether it be someone that's a professional fisherman, or it doesn't really matter what it is. They might not always love work necessarily. There's always going to be a couple things about work that no one really loves. A couple things that people aren't always looking in, that people aren't always excited about. But for the most part, you'll have pretty damn good satisfaction out of it most of the time, and you'll feel really good about it. And it's something that you can be really proud of about it. And so just kind of throughout this whole thing, me talking about do more, be more, and me talking about, betting on yourself. The whole reason for doing more and being more is that the more that you do, the more opportunity you have to become something that you can actually bet on. And then from there, you roll the dice on yourself. You're going to feel a lot better rolling the dice of life on yourself than you will on anybody else's stuff.
Yeah, and then kind of wrapping things up a little bit, but you said something about hurdles, and it just reminded me of, in PE, how like terrified I was to get over those damn hurdles. And then
they're high. You're like, oh shit.
Yeah, and these weren't even like legit height. They were like small. But I just remember being so scared, and then I finally got over it. And then what ended up happening was I fucked up and I hit one, and it went down super easy. And I was like, oh, that wasn't that bad at all. And so it just made me think, like, like the knee sleeves blowing out, some of these things that people are like really worried about happening before they even come close to happening. It's like when it does happen, it's actually not going to be the end of the world. Like you'll Google some shit and you'll figure it out. But that's just what it reminded me of. And I wanted to throw that in there because
no, it's really well said. It's not, how many times have you gone to do something and really, failed miserably? Like you strike out in baseball, or you go to hit a golf ball and you can barely hit it at all. Andrew's laughing because I'm not very good at that. But like you're gonna fail at stuff, and like what? So how would I solve the problem of not being able to hit a golf ball very successfully? I'd have to get some practice at it. I gotta like learn it. First time I shot a gun, I like couldn't hit anything. And more recently, I went probably like my third or fourth time. I was able to hit the target pretty good. And I was like, okay, cool. Like I still suck at it. Is it possible for me to get better at it? Is it possible for me to be like Keanu Reeves at it? Like it could be, but I would have to like, you have to like redo everything that you're doing. How easy would it be to be like Nsima at jiu-jitsu? I mean, there's too many factors in there. First of all, there's a genetic component where Nsima is just brutally strong and brutally, he's just very athletic. He's very quick. So on top of that, even if you spend a lot of time doing jiu-jitsu, you're still not necessarily going to be able to catch up to him because of the level that he's at. But the point in mentioning that is, even with the level that he's at, which it would be hard to duplicate and it would be hard to surpass him, can he get better? Of course he can. Like he would be like, dude, kid, like he would tell you that he thinks he's kind of horrible in the grand scheme of things, like compared to maybe, some 11-time, world champion or something. He'd be like, yeah, that guy would kill me every time, I think. And so there's it's really easy to kind of calm down about everything when you just recognize that everything is solvable, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And like my buddy Shane, he told me before I had my son, he's like, what in your life were you terrified of or were you really anxious for that ended up actually being that bad? And I was like, well, I guess nothing, because you build these things up and then when it happens, it's like, oh, wait, that's actually wasn't too bad at all.
Yeah. And, not much changes in your life when you go from, you have a girlfriend and you get engaged and you get married. Like, obviously they're larger commitments and they're great things to think about. They're great things to take your time with and stuff. But like, in terms of like being scared to do it, what you'll notice is that not a whole lot changes usually. Once you have a child, then it throws a nice monkey wrench in there. It changes it. That does change everything. But just go like, the day after you get engaged, your girlfriend's not looking at you way differently necessarily. Like nothing's different. It's kind of like getting a college diploma. Like you just got a piece of paper, but you were already that smart. Like you've probably been that smart for a long time. You passed an extra test or two, like to get there. Like it doesn't really make any sense. You're not really a different person at that point. And so as we go through these different stages of life, it's really easy to understand how reluctant we can be or how scared we can be to enter into these different zones, but they really don't make you a different person. The only thing that can make you do anything is your own thoughts about how you feel about certain things. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic conversation, Mark. Appreciate it. I know
thank you for the question.
The class definitely appreciates it. If you guys do, please hit that like button, subscribe if you guys want more of this type of content. hit us up on Instagram at Mark Bell's Power Project. Hit us up with maybe even more questions. We reached out before, and you guys kind of came a little hard. You hit us with too many questions at once. But we'll go ahead and open the floodgates again if you guys want to hear Mark touch on a certain topic. I know nutrition was heavy on the poll the other day. We can probably get into some more fitnessy stuff, or if you guys like this financial, entrepreneur motivation type stuff, we could definitely do that. Just let us know. But if you have anything else, Mark, that was fantastic, dude. Thank you.
That's it, man. I just really want to say I really appreciate the fans, and our fans and our audience they're special. People are so excited and so fired up about the content. And hearing all the different people that are supporters of the Power Project. I got a video that I was watching today from a guy in Scotland, and I haven't watched the whole thing just yet because he Mark Bell'd me, which I thought was awesome, because I mean, this guy he rambled on for a long time. He, like, in between him talking, he's like sipping on his coffee and stuff, just taking his sweet ass time. But it intrigued me more. I only listened to half of it so far, but it intrigued me more to listen to it, because I'm like, oh my God, he's Mark Belling me right now. Like, he's telling his whole story, and he hasn't even got to the point yet. But I love that about our fans. I love that each fan has a different connection to us. That 2 guys and 1 bench, those were guys that just texted me out of nowhere because they saved my number from Instagram from a long time ago.
Andy was so mad at you.
I know, it was great. She was like, "You did what?" And they were like, odds of getting to Mark is, probably not going to happen. But this other fan was the same way. He was somebody that hit me up on Instagram, and he's somebody I did respond to and replied to. And he mentioned he was going through like a tough time, and I was like, I'll just give you a call. And then it actually never worked out that we actually ever did get on a call, because I couldn't figure out the time zone and shit like that with Scotland. It got to be really weird.
It's just hard to like dial the number, Like,
I know. I don't know why your phone doesn't allow you just to dial it, but I guess like WhatsApp and stuff is now you can kind of figure out stuff. But it's way more complicated than it needs to be. But we have some awesome fans, and I appreciate all of you guys, and thank you so much. So stick by us. We'll never steer you wrong. Strength is never weakness. Weakness is never strength. Catch you guys later. Bye.